Just for people that may be wondering what I'm doing, I'm not doing anything too fancy or nothing you couldn't do yourself with a little bit of help from a couple of pages. The first thing I have, and this is my top view, and I'm not sure why I'm able to totally roll it around and have fun with it. So let's just, must have adjusted something. Let's just put it back to what it was. I think the top view is kind of nice to look at. Um, yeah, it's not rolling around now. Basically, I have two sites. I'm going into this site here, which is absolutely fantastic. It's atlv.org, and you're allowed to go in here and check out everything you could ever imagine. And I'm not really downloading the Grasshopper file. I'm looking at it, and I'm not just cutting and pasting. This one's pretty similar to the one we're going to be doing, though. I didn't change it too much. And the only thing I'm doing is going through that script and trying to make the shift from something that has the import. Uh, Actually, we're getting into some importing some difficult things here, which are a little different than what I was doing before, but mainly it's the import Rhino script syntax is RS, and all I'm doing is taking that and jumping over to Rhino developer and going into APIs, Rhino common, saying, okay, let's see if I can find what's going on there as functions and libraries or whatever you want to call them. All these namespaces contain all this amazing stuff in Rhino Common. So if I jump in there and I can grab something, I can not only say, okay, I want to do something specific to, I don't know, this don't look that exciting to me, point at end, and then I'm able to go and see the C# and the VB script. Now, sometimes you can actually see the Python script for that when it gets more and more complex. The other thing you can do is you can hunt around in this crazy world of Rhino developer and go into samples and try and find something like, here's a very simple one, add circle, and you'll notice now they're giving you examples of it, not just in C#, VB.NET, but Python. So in seeing that, I'm able to take my ATLV scripts, which are based in Rhino syntax, and sometimes they use Rhino common, which is kind of nice to see. They certainly import maths once in a while. Here's one where they import both. That's kind of nice. That was an input too. So you could see at times they're typing in RG, and at other times they're typing in RS, and that can get really confusing after a while. But I'm trying to figure out why I would do one or the other. So that's what I'm doing on this series, and I'm only doing this even though these scripts get pretty darn amazing and produce some incredible geometries in the scripts. You know, I figured in doing so, I would learn. I would not only learn Rhino script syntax better, but I'd learn Rhino common, and I'd also, which is a huge, range of functions you can do. I think that's the word for it. And but I'm learning Python at the same time, or I'm applying the Python I've learned. So that's really what I've gone into. And in a nutshell, I mean, these videos are becoming a little more talking. So let's just jump in here and see this one script, and I'll throw it through an animate. It's kind of fun. And you see how this one, and this is just top view. Pretty cool structure being built by an animation in 12 steps. And what I've done with that is gone in and written their scripts that were Rhino script syntax at RS. And like I said, I put in the math. I haven't done any maths here yet, which hasn't made it any funky, but I still have the maths there for me. But if we take a look through that script right here, we have a for loop that, first of all, we make a list of an empty list, open or array, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it a list. And for point in points, I'm going to have close points at as another empty list, and then for point 2 in points. So this is kind of interesting. I have to define something else as a variable that's running through the points that have been selected. Now we should go back to Grasshopper and say, well, where are these points coming from? Because you haven't written them into here. Where's this threshold coming from? We're going to talk about it a little later in here. I think there's threshold around here somewhere. But basically, the points and threshold is a script that allows me to grab this amount of points, and I've chosen 60 in this populated 3D box, and probably at that point I should be kind enough to go into here and grab it into a render. We'll grab it in shaded, and you can kind of make out what's happening. I'm gonna pull my threshold down, which allows things in and out. So the points being generated, if we were to look at everything, turn everything on in here, we've got a box that we've populated points, and I'm going to turn that off. And then the points are going to generate through this node a line between those points. So it's not making a mesh, it's making something similar to that, and then I've thrown on a pipe. And what I'm going to do just temporarily for the pipe is just disable that so we can actually just see the lines, and it should move fairly fast. So as we move that, you can see you can start to make this kind of cool structure. And the script that does that is choosing to take those points and find a distance. And to find a distance is not as easy as in Rhino script syntax where you just type distance. You've got to go into a Rhino geometry, point 3D, and then find distance 2. And that will be from point, which is what you've set up in here, to point 2. And we've got a loop here, and we've got a loop here. And we created this close point, and you'll see what happens to close points list as we go. We're going to append that if the distance is greater than 0 and the distance is less than the threshold. So that's why we can kind of set a condition on the threshold to choose which points are selected, which gives us control. And it's kind of a cool technique of putting it greater than 0, which excludes the 0. And then you're appending that list, and now you have a nice list that's been appended by point 2. So it should make a little bit of sense appended by this iteration. And then you can continue within that for loop, and you can get a count. This is a great way to get the amount of items in a list without having to hard copy it. And every time you change it, you got to figure out what it is, or you got to bring it in. The length is just going to calculate that for you. Now, I've done that in many ways all the time. It's one of my favorite functions of just going in here and grabbing a list length. But list length can be done right here by length, another function we haven't used yet. You don't have to change it from Rhino script to Rhino common or Rhino.geometry, or try and find it in Rhino common. Not saying it has to be in Rhino.geometry. There's many namespaces that it can be in under Rhino. And if that's not making sense, just kind of jump over to here and get into here and realize that it's a once you get into the API and choose it, you have all these selections. And what I usually do is just click this one, because most things I can try and find are in here. And you can always just do a search here and see what tends to pop up. So that's kind of nice. So let's go again. We're going to do another if it is greater than 3. And so you're setting another variable here within the loop of close points, because we have a list here. So we're saying if in this loop we've got C point to Z point, and then we're basically using the Rhino geometry command again to use 3D point to define. And you got to do a little math in here, and you got to grab some numbers out of those points. And remember what we did before by grabbing the X and Y attribute. Keep in mind PT doesn't have to be PT. It could be spelling out point, it could spell dog, it could spell bear cat, whatever you want. But in the sense, you're grabbing attributes of that X, Y, and Z to generate a point. And this has been kind of interestingly it is parametric, because you got to pull the count back. And if you start just playing with simple hard-coded numbers in here, you'll see the effects of those on what you've been doing. So if we change that count to 3, I'm not sure, because we're getting deep into the math now. You can see you start to play on the heights of those. So let's do that by 6, and we're pulling it into the negative. Let's just set it back to 2 to what it was. But play with each hard-coded number and each percentage until you start to realize the power of working with variables that are being defined by other things which have been created, because they've been defined by open lists, which are defined by points, and then bring your things back into whatever parameters you want before your Python node. And this is where I'm much more excited about going back to the left. I want to go to the left of the grasshopper. I don't want to go to the right. The right slows things down. As soon as you start piping and extruding and doing all this extra stuff, the longer your script gets. The faster your script gets to be if you can keep it to the Python node before. So that's why I've actually chosen to go that route, and I think that's the route where people go as developers. And of course, if you really want to brave everything and go in here and get back into your functions, grab your C#. A lot of examples are in Rhino Common to go right into the C#. And I'm at this cusp of like, should I be spending all my time on C Sharp, uh, learning that on solo learn and get the language down? Because am I not going to be needing to know that more if I want to take my skill sets into making plugins for Grasshopper? I certainly have my head around some of the projects and ideas that I think people would use and utilize, be it jewelry or sculpture or architecture or automotive design or anything like that. So it's a real push, but I'm glad I made this site, which is about Python programming. People say if you're an artist, stay with that. That's what I've been my whole life. If you want to go into development. But I guess what's happening is I'm going back to my math roots and what I did since a young child, where I found a lot to do. So it is a toss up to what I need to do. It's nice to have Grasshopper skill set. It's a subset of Rhino. I don't have to know all my Rhino tricks. I watch PJ Chang do their jewelry with Rhino, and it's absolutely amazing. It gives me more ideas to do in Grasshopper. But once I get my hand around Grasshopper loosely as a subset of Rhino, I want to chase that back into clusters, and I want to chase it back into the Python node. And then, of course, C Sharp. That's where I am, and things seem to be progressing after 3 months of intense development. And we should finish this because all we're doing then is taking a line and what a line needs. And I love this. It's just like the opposite of having to, well, not really add line in RhinoScript syntax. You just go down to Rhino geometry dot line, and you're able to type in the 2 points that you want to draw the line between, and then you'll append that line to that. You end up with this very cool geometry. So here we are, uh, you know, having incredible control. That once I was trying to generate single iterations of this and play with it in sets, trees. This is the thing that pushed me out of Grasshopper back into Python, was getting a handle on pretty much programming in relative items, let's say, and dealing with offsets between tree data. And the trick with Python now is going to be, how do I control my data and make sure it's coming out not just as lists, but starting to come out with tree patterns. And Jeremy Graham's LinkedIn computational design or scripting in Python in Rhino Common is probably the best $50 you'll ever spend. That's what I did. And I should say that I'm not eager to stay so much with this. I mean, I am. It's very interesting stuff. But this is going to get complex real fast and go a lot quicker than I want to develop in Rhino Common. So I'm actually waiting for a text out of China that is not translated into English, and that's what this project's really about. I'm still waiting in the mail for it. I did express mail. I hoped it would be here by the end of the week. It's not. I'll go back to the beginning of this. This is all just practice on ATLV until I get that book, and then I'm going to reset this series and do an introductory for beginners. So I hope that makes sense. That's more my ideas of what I'm doing, just for people that are interested. Keep signing up or sending to your friends. Get into GhPython script Facebook closed group, and we're growing, and it seems very exciting. Thank you for watching. Michael Wickerson at Wickerson Studios.